Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what we hope will be rather an innovative, perhaps even beautiful session. Its theme is collaboration. Collaboration across sectors and across peoples and between people. The thing that I find so attractive about forests is how multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral they are. They cross so many lines. But that also, of course, is what's challenging about forests and forestry sometimes. So what we're going to do in the next hour and a half is just meditate a little bit on collaboration and hopefully contemplate also on some of the collaborations that may have emerged in the last couple of days here in Seoul. To begin, can I welcome to the stage Do Yoon-gu, who is a crossover musical artist, a violinist, who plays Korean folk songs, Western instrument. She's a violinist. And today she'll play a medley of 3 songs, Korean songs, Spring in My Hometown, Missing My Old Brother, and Sleeping Baby in Island, which go back to the 1920s. And it's a wonderful way, we think, to begin this contemplation of collaboration. Would you like to come to the stage? Wasn't that absolutely beautiful? What a joy to hear. Can I now ask the brilliant organizer of this session, Thomas Hoffer, to come to the stage and give us a quick opening address. Thomas is a senior forestry officer at FAO and team leader for biodiversity and restoration.
Thank you, James. Just to clarify that this session was organized with in a very collaborative way with many colleagues in FAO, but also outside. I will come to that. Your Royal Highness, Excellency, Princess Basma bint Ali, Maria Elena Semedo, Deputy Director General of FAO, Excellencies, colleagues and friends. We are here at the closing session of Subtheme 6, which had the overall topic, Forests Beyond Boundaries. And in line with the overall subject or spirit of this sub-theme, we have organized the session in a very collaborative way, but also all the sessions throughout the week. It is my pleasure to give you in a few minutes some key messages which came across in the different sessions during the week. Session 1 was setting the stage, and it has hosted high-level keynotes and a panel to reflect forests without boundaries from different perspectives and entry points. Here are the few key messages from session 1. We need to seek social equity for better collaboration in forests. We need to put forests and nature-based climate solutions at the center, including nature-based solutions, integrated forest restoration and protection, agroforestry, planted forest, climate-smart agriculture, etc. We need to enhance collaborative action in all sectors and joint decisions that will impact next generations, impact on youth. We need to enhance intergenerational cooperation in order to reach the common goals of forests. And finally, forest science has a responsibility to provide evidence for the full range of contributions that forests make in terms of ecosystem services for people living across landscapes, depending on and benefiting from forests. This message needs to get across to policy and the general public to affect decisions and lifestyles. Session 2, forests and water connections to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. This session was organized by the Stockholm International Water Institute, CIFOR, and UNEP. The session discussed forest and water interactions in the context of the SDGs and looking at the whole spectrum from the mountains to the mangroves. Here are the key messages. Ensure ecosystem restoration approaches that consider forest, water, climate, people relationships. We need to integrate forest water management in broader landscape approaches. We need to strengthen and develop policies that take into account the forest-water nexus. Forests and trees are used to increase the city's resilience in the face of more frequent extreme storms due to climate change. So a very powerful message for urban environments. Session 3, partnerships with indigenous peoples and local communities that deliver sustainable forest management in fragile ecosystems. This session was organized by the Albertine Rift Conservation Society, ARCOS, from Africa, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICIMOD, and the Center for People and the Environment, RECOFT-TC. The key message is we need to use tools, methods, models, and systems to empower communities to have access and rights to forest resources and opportunities for sustainable management while assuring fragile ecosystem protection. Participatory land use planning with all stakeholders and approved by local authorities is a real strategy to achieve forest management planning. Indigenous peoples are not stakeholders, but they are right holders. Partnerships are important to build. They are fragile and built on trust. We must grow them, cultivate them, and protect them. Session 4, Partnership and Collaboration for Sustainable Forest Management. This session was organized by the United Nations Forum on Forests and the ASEAN Forest Cooperation Organization, AFOCO. The key messages: we need to engage and dialogue with a very wide range of partners, also non-traditional ones, and further expand. We need to make partnerships more visible, not only within country and regions they are operating, but everywhere, and achieve goals of governance and funding and share learnings. And finally, we need to engage with different and new areas of activities in order to make our activities more scalable. I hope with this short summary I have done justice to the rich discussions we had during the week under this sub-theme 6. I would like to thank all partners who have worked with us in the preparation and implementation of these sessions. And for me, this is not the end here, this is a start. So we have gone through a process which we will continue, and the collaboration will further expand. I thank you for your kind attention, and I hand back to James. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much indeed, Thomas. Could I ask our couples, our dialoguers, to come to the stage, please, and take your seats. Very good. So, I think the format may be clear to you now, but we're going to have 10 minutes of conversation by each of our couples, dialoguing across their areas of expertise, their regions, if you like, their disciplines, taking in some of the things that they've learned, some of the things that they've meditated on the last couple of days, and we hope trying to learn a little bit about the other's perspective. With that, I'd like to invite our first dialoguing couple, Juan Carlos Jintiach, to my left here. Juan Carlos is a tribal leader and a deputy at COICA, and with him, Ms. Adriana Lucia Santa Mendez, who's a director of forestry, biodiversity and ecosystem services from Colombia. Juan Carlos and Adriana, could you please discuss for us the place of indigenous peoples in our forest conversations, and actually in the forest itself? What is the centrality of indigenous peoples in all of the forest management, conservation, production topics that we've been discussing this week? Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. Indigenous people and the community of indigenous people have made many efforts in order to voice our rights and our needs. And so, as a result, our rights have to be upheld and they have to be respected. Indigenous people and community members worldwide need to place ourselves on the global stage, and they need to be respected, and their voices need to be heard. And we believe that practice is extremely important. We need to be recognized our rights to our land, and individual countries need to understand our such rights and recognize our rights. It should not be forgotten. And we ask you to empower us, because it is the indigenous people and the communities that need to manage and protect the forests. And we can contribute and help you in managing forests. And we need to work together in partnership and we need to play a central role. Indigenous people need to be at the center of the dialogue. Juan Carlos, thank you very much. The comments made by Juan Carlos is extremely important. Indigenous people, indeed, need to participate in exercising their rights for their land. And as a member of the Ministry of Forestry, Biodiversity, and Ecosystem Services in Colombia, I would like to speak a little bit from our perspective. The indigenous people and their community, they need to play a role in the local areas that they live, but they also need to play an important role in the international arena and in the international agreements. That is because it is the indigenous people that take care of our forests. We have 65,000 hectares of natural forest, and 33% of these forests are under the ownership of indigenous people. This means that indigenous people need to take care of our forests. And there are many minorities and also those from Africa who are taking care of our forests in Colombia and in Ecuador. And there are countries sharing the Amazon forests. And it is extremely important for us to take care of the Amazon river and the Amazon forest. The Amazon River is shared by 9 countries in Latin America. And in our public policies, we need to reflect the voice of indigenous people, and we are already doing this. In Colombia's development plan, we recognize the role of the central government and also the role of indigenous people. Regarding nature, we know that there is a commitment and a promise that needs to be upheld regarding conservation of nature. And on this road to conserving environment and nature, we believe that it is important to carry out environment-related education and training. A lot of education and training is being carried out in the indigenous communities. That is because we understand that we know that the indigenous people are taking care of the land, and the government, as they carry out policies, they need to understand the importance of the indigenous people. And by 2030, we have policies to achieve the goal of net zero by 2030. So through these various policies, Colombia aims to improve its environment, and we have a Vision Amazon. It is a strategy, and we are working with Norway in implementing this plan, and it is about managing the Amazon area, and it is about managing our forests in Amazon, and we want to carry these activities out in a more systematic way, and we want to set up better institutions. And as we set up these institutions and implement various activities, we are encouraging participation from the indigenous people. And as we organize and make improvements on our forests, we want to encourage various activities, and we would like to better utilize our resources for ecotourism and other activities. Also, for children, we stress the importance of resources, and we want to raise awareness about the importance of natural resources to our children. This is another direction for us. And to this end, we are also providing financing, and we need funds to support these programs. And we are working on allocating appropriate funds for this. And the government, of course, needs to play a role. However, communities also need to participate actively and in a positive way to make this a reality. So the government stresses and understands the importance of partnering and working together with indigenous people. We know that the government cannot cover everything, that there will be gaps, and these gaps can be filled through the indigenous people. In order to fill these gaps, we need to work with indigenous people, and education and training is extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for those remarks, for that conversation. I think there's no lack of agreement between you about indeed the centrality of indigenous peoples in these debates, especially where indigenous peoples predominate as they do in the Amazon. Can I turn to our next couple of dialogues immediately close to me? They are Paula Sarigumba. Paula is a youth champion, and Eric Luia, who is our who is the vice chairman of the Indonesia Furniture Industry and Handicraft Association. Paula and Eric, what I would love you to discuss is the need for the private sector to look out for collaborations beyond itself, how it goes about that, and who those collaborations should be with. Who are the stakeholders that the private sector should be engaging with? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. Where I'm coming from, we're furniture manufacturers, and we do use a lot of forestry products in our production. We have always looked for ways. We have always tried to endeavor to first utilize the best that we can of what we use from nature, and at the same time find the most sustainable way in which we are able to obtain those resources. For us in the private sector, I think that there is a lot of things that we can do, that we want to do, but the question has always been how. That is the biggest challenge that we have. I know that I share a lot of thoughts between us in our factory and our facilities, and also a lot of people in the same industry, that we want to contribute, we do want to do our part, but the biggest question is how. What can we do? And what, where, and who we can collaborate with in order to make, put in our share to make the difference, especially in the forestry and sustainability efforts that we do. I think perhaps Paula, if you could talk to us a bit about what we can do.
Yeah, Eric, you're right. I think more than ever we have to demonstrate the humongous potential of forests in combating the global challenges that we face today. And for that to happen is that we don't have to look at the usual suspects when we create partnerships. We have to go beyond the traditional route when we create collaborations. So we have to be innovative in terms of building linkages amongst each other, among the forestry and the non-forestry groups. Even the spaces and forums that we create, like just the World Forestry Congress, I think we can go beyond the usual people that we see right now, and then it goes beyond, beyond forestry, and how we make these congress become more and more multi-sectoral. And to me, as a young person, I am now the program lead for nature-based solutions at Bear Tree, where we try to bring corporates to pledge in their restoration efforts, and then find local partners on the ground. So collaboration is very important. And for me as a young professional, having that a lens of innovation is important. And I think, Eric, you as a young person yourself see this, right? Being youth is important, and putting young people at the center of our programs, of our initiatives is what you think is something that we should also consider.
Definitely, Paula. I myself, I am a second generation in the company, and I do associate also with a lot of second generation furniture manufacturers from the ASEAN region. And one thing that I know we have in common is our desire to do our part. You know, again, relating back to what I said earlier, it's always the how. You know, we are fortunate enough to be in a stage where information is widely available, that we are highly educated, and we are aware of what's happening, you know, especially in sustainability efforts and the forestry sector. But as entrepreneurs, as coming in from the private sector, we do see the need of collaboration. You know, there's only so much that we ourselves can do by ourselves. But if we collaborate, I think that the result would be exponential. You know, we need to find ways in which we are able to work together with programs, with, we want to become champions. We want to try and become youth champions in bringing all these sustainable efforts to fruition, to life. Because I think this is something that is, you know, dear to us. And, you know, as time goes, you know, we realize how much more important and how much more urgent it has become.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, when we speak to corporates and for my job, they say the same thing as what you say right now. They have the meaning intentions. They want to contribute to the environment. They want to be part of the movement, but they always have the question of how. And, you know, I think for us here at the audience, I think we all have a stake on this. How do we build, how do we bring together these puzzle pieces and build something together? But it takes a lot of effort, and it's not an easy thing. And I think one of the factors that we really have to consider is that transparency. And I think we really have to focus that, you know, that we have to be transparent in our partnerships. We have to be transparent and in terms of reporting of what we do, of what of our progress, of everything that we're doing, right?
Completely agree with you. Transparency is key, and at the same time also traceability and accountability. I think that's where a key factor lies. Because for us, you know, in the private sector, we also we want to be accountable to what we do. And we need help to be able to get the statistics, get the reports, you know, get an evaluation of how we're doing and the impact that we're making. And I believe that is not just important, it's not important just for us, but also for the stakeholders as well. You know, we're exporting products all over the world, and I'm sure that it is a common interest to the end markets in the UK, in the US, in the European Union, that, you know, the end customers themselves, they do want to know as well, and they are aware of the issues we're facing. And I think, you know, if we can get help and to find a way to collaborate such that, you know, people in the private sector such as us, we have a gateway, that we have a program that we can participate in, and, you know, extend the efforts beyond of just, you know, this conference to something that is real, something that is happening, and it's an everyday event.
Yeah, I'm also glad that, you know, we're sharing the same thoughts on this, because we both are young professionals, and I think, you know, we have a lot of things to contribute on this collaboration and building transparent collaboration, and so we should not. You know, we should not let go of all the ideals that we have for this collaboration. Thank you, James.
Thank you both very much indeed for that a powerful and rather heartwarming conversation. And then our last, thank you, well deserved. And then our last couple, Amy Duchel, researcher, and Alfred Gichu, who's from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in Kenya. What I would love, Alfred and Amy, is if you could put your heads together and give us some thoughts on the role of science in policy making in Kenya.
Great. Thanks. Hi, Alfred. So I'm at FAO and leading the Forest and Climate Change team, but before that I was at the Center for International Forestry Research in Indonesia, so I come from things from a science perspective. And, you know, during the course of this Congress, I've been looking for the new and exciting science around. And one of the things that has been in a few sessions is really the need to make more visible the climate benefits that forests provide that go beyond greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So really thinking about how forests regulate the climate by moving water, through evaporation and the cooling benefits that they provide for the forest itself, but also for the region more broadly. And even through their physical structure, through canopy roughness, there are these cooling benefits as well. And this sort of extra mitigation that's not really accounted for when we think about accounting for greenhouse gases in the context of the UNFCCC and national climate policy. And of course, this has huge impacts for agriculture, for people's livelihoods, for people's lives, if forests can reduce temperatures and reduce extreme weather. And so how do we, you're the REDD coordinator, how do we elevate the importance of these non-carbon mitigation benefits that also have adaptation benefits in the climate policy realm?
Thank you very much for that question, and my pleasure to be here this afternoon to respond. And yes, we have discussions going on across countries in terms of how countries can respond effectively to climate change mitigation. But the discussions are also held in the context of the need for us also to respond to other global commitments that countries have made. And then it's also in the context of how we manage our forestry resources in the country. In my country, forests are very strong. Forest conservation and development are strongly driven by environmental services, majorly water, water conservation, biodiversity conservation, the need for us to improve livelihoods, and also provision of goods, specific goods, including timber and non-timber forest products. So climate has come in and further made a demand that we need to invest in actions that deliver climate. So from where we sit as a country, we strongly see forest sector development, sustainable forest management and conservation very strongly driven by climate change adaptation, but with strong mitigation benefits.
Thank you. That's nice. Adaptation with the mitigation is
adaptation with mitigation benefits.
Yeah, that's right. I saw you speak in the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration session on Tuesday, and you nicely described Kenya's efforts on forest landscape restoration, and it was very clear that this was science-driven and research-driven, and so it would be interesting to hear how you facilitated that. Really getting the science into the policy making.
Now, the discussions we have had since Monday about landscape restoration is also a discussion that requests countries to invest in actions that can be monitored over time, actions that deliver transformative, actions that can be permanent in nature, and actions that will require that we invest in some understanding of where we sit today. That is the strong space for science, especially in understanding where we sit today with regard to climate, our baselines, where we sit today with regard to biodiversity conservation, where we sit today with regard to land degradation. That's an area that requires investment in science, deployment of remote sensing, cloud inventories, carbon specialists, so that we understand. And then we invest in a program that continuously monitors our performance. But the other aspect is, and I want to ask is whether we want to invest in actions that have not traditionally delivered value. Because we have been in this landscape for decades. do we want to put our money in the same activities that have traditionally delivered for us? Where is the problem in the landscape? And what are we supposed to do? What kind of policies would we be proposing that will deliver what we want at the end of the day? So we need to, and some of us have already invested in a lot of analytical studies that informs where the problem is. Because those of us in forest, sometimes we say we have a forestry problem, but the solution may not necessarily be in the forestry sector. It could be in agriculture, it could be in the rangelands. So we need science to inform what the problem is and to inform policy in terms of what needs to be done to drive that transformative path.
Yeah, that's great. I heard a few times during the Congress, we know enough. We don't need any more research, we need to act. And my sense is, yes, we do know a lot, and we know a lot about the current crisis situation, indeed, and we do need to act. But there are still knowledge gaps as well, and so I'd be interested to hear from you, maybe as a last question, what are those key knowledge gaps in your role, in your country?
Yes, and I listened to the last conversation.
Yeah.
And the need for us to specifically bring on board the private sector. To bring on board the communities, to bring on board the smallholder farmers, so that they can effectively engage and invest in actions in the landscapes.
Yeah. And in terms of scientific support, research support for that?
Yes. So the issue is, in the context of especially climate change, how do we incentivize actions on the ground? There is a lot of policy directions that have already been provided at the global level, but we still do not know how to incentivize or to link some of those global policies with local level actions. And we've talked about REDD+, for example, and we have talked about it as a national level process, but a national level process that will require local level actions. And that local action is where the communities, the private sector, and the smallholder farmers are. How do we link them with the global processes? How do we allow them to continuously access the finance that we have all agreed should be scaled up? How do we support them access that finance? How do we support a discussion on benefit sharing? How do we have a coherent conversation around how to link what they do with the national level NDCs? I think this is a space for science. This is a space for scientists that they need to come and support us.
That's great. Well, we just published a paper on this in Environmental Research Letters about how REDD+ projects can contribute to the Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll share that with you after today's dialogue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alfred and Amy, for entering into that with such good heart. That was terrific. And thank you to all our three dialoguers, to Paula, to Eric, to Juan Carlos, to Adriana, and again to you, Amy and Alfred. Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know. I took from that dialogue is difficult, actually, isn't it? We're still better at saying our pieces, giving the positions that we've given some thought to in advance, than to give and take. I mean, that's not a comment on our three sets of performers who were terrific. It's hard doing it on a stage in bright lights in front of lots of people, but it's just generally difficult to adapt to another person coming from a very different perspective. I think that to keep that difficulty in mind in and of itself is valuable. We move now into the next stage of our session. We have some high-level keynote speeches, the first of which will be given by Maria Elena Semedo, who's the Deputy Director General of FAO. Maria Elena.
Thank you, James, and good afternoon to all. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as you could hear and listen from the dialogue, we had a very rich program this week focusing on forests without boundaries. It has been discussed about enhancing cooperation and partnership at institutional, at field level, in the context of the global forest development. As it has been said, forests give us the opportunity to expand collaboration at multi-sector and multi-actors. I wish to highlight some messages that emerge throughout this week. The first one is forests are a key part of the solution to today's and future complex challenge, transforming agri-food system, mitigating and adapting to climate change. We have just heard from our discussion, building resilience, greening economies, and recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. Sustainable forest management is fundamental to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, to halt deforestation from the current rate of 10 million hectares per year, to maintain high-quality water, and to conserve biodiversity. To fully unlock this potential, sustainable forest management must reach beyond the forest sector. And I believe during this week, all of us, we heard in all the events that we cannot continue to look or to work on silos. We need to go beyond the forest sector. And to maximize the benefits forests provide to people and planet, their sustainable management and use needs to be an integral part of a mosaic of sustainable land use and agri-food system. Balancing the sustainable use and conservation of forests is key to maintain the multiple benefits, goods and services that forests provide. And this should not be taken for granted. Including all sectors is a must, where the strong engagement of local and indigenous communities and the inclusion of traditional knowledge and modern science. We just heard about the importance of innovation, research. They are all essential to meaningfully scale up action on the ground. We just heard about the importance of policies, how to link public policies to investment, to territorial management, how to link science to policies, and also that women and youth should be considered at all levels and all decision-making. To put forests without boundaries into practice at all levels, we must enhance collaboration beyond the forestry sector, including with the private sector that can offer significant opportunities for innovation, financing, and I should say to move at scale. We also have been said that we need to consider the smallholder farmers and we need to connect the smallholder farmers to the global processes. At the international level, the potential to contribute to and collaborate with existing regional and global environmental and development frameworks need to be fully leveraged. The global climate agenda the post-2020 biodiversity framework, the United Nations water, the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, just to name a few. Sustainable forest management needs to be further mainstreamed across the 2030 agenda. Forest-dependent communities deserve particular attention if we want to be successful in achieving the vision of leaving no one behind. And here it has already been said, the importance of the inclusion of indigenous people, women, youth, all together should be part of the solution. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let's build on this rich discussion, outcomes, and recommendation. Also, it has been said that the importance now is the how. We know what to do, but how we'll be working together, how we'll be building together is the challenge we have ahead. We have unique opportunities to strengthen our partnership and our work together and going beyond the usual people, to be innovative and to build linkages. In fact, we have shaped the session under this spirit, preparing them in close partnership with many key institutions. I would like to thank partners for their enthusiasm and commitment. The Stockholm International Water Institute, CIFOR-ICRAF, UNEP, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, the Center for People and Environment, the Albertine Reef Conservation Society, UNFF, and the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization. I also like to thank the excellent speakers of today's session, and we had a very interesting and dynamic dialogue. It was especially encouraging to see young people, the decision makers of the future, well represented on the panel. And I really wish that, as you said, you became champions. And you call us that we need to be accountable and we need to be transparent. I appreciate the participation of Ms. Hans Hugavin, Independent Chairperson of the FAO Council, for being with us, albeit remotely, and express my highest appreciation to Her Royal Highness, Princess Basmata bin Ali of Jordan, FAO recently nominated Goodwill Ambassador. The Princess has been with us throughout this week. She left her family in the week of Ramadan to spend time with us, showing his commitment and his engagement to the work we have done. I think she deserves a good round of applause. Finally, I would like to thank all Congress participants who attended the Subteam 6 session and for contributing to the fruitful discussion. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you for your contribution. And over to you, James.
Thank you. Thank you very much once again, Maria Elena. And we're now going to hear from Hans Hugavin, who's the independent chair of the FAO Council. He's not with us, alas, but is going to give us his thoughts anyway.
You can see and hear me?
We can
yes,
now.
I see now myself.
Thank you.
Great to be with you, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. And although I'm now the independent chairperson of the FAO Council, I have my roots already for a long time in the forest. 2007, leading the final negotiations on the International Forest Instrument. After 15 years of negotiations, leading, after 8 years, the Strategic Framework for Sustainable Forest Management. So it's great to be back with you in the forest. And what I heard today and what I saw in the program and what I heard back from the discussions, we are on the right track. But at the same time, we cannot rest on our laurels and we have to do more. because the facts are not favoring us. Indeed, what was said by Maria Elena Semedo, we need to mainstream forestry in all the sectors, sustainable forest management. We have to unlock the potential. But to be honest, the way how we are doing it now, it's not getting us there where we have to be in 2030, 8 years left. And for that, I think we have to be much more bold. We have to be honest to ourselves that the tracks we have chosen are not delivering what they should deliver. And it was said, we need action on the ground. I think we have done everything what we could do at the global level. We have the forest instrument, we have the strategy, we have the policies, but it comes now down to action. And we know how difficult it will be to get from words to action. And there I think the slogan, which we probably heard many times, is we have to think globally, but act locally. And the foresters really have to get out of the woods or out of the forest if we want to mainstream sustainable forest management. And we have to ask ourselves the question, what can we do more boldly if we know what to do? And I think for that we need transformative change. And of course, what was said, we need partnerships. But partnerships has become a little bit of a buzzword, sometimes even without meaning. Look to the World Food System Summit. More than 250 partnerships were presented. Half of them are already diminished with half a year. That are not the partnerships we need. We need the partnerships to support the national and local level. And there we have the instrument in our hands. We have the NDCs. But what we have to do is use the instrument of the NDCs to see what do countries at the country level need to implement sustainable forest management. What do they need for the youth? What do they need for the women? What do they need for the smallholder farmers? If you draw that picture, a country profile for sustainable forest management within the NDCs, you have a start for action on the ground. And it is true, we learned our lesson. We cannot do anymore without the private sector. And it was promising that the representative of the private sector said, we are ready to work with you. But are we really approaching the private sector in a way that they can work together with us? I didn't see so many private sector initiatives or corporations at country level at this moment. But I know that countries stand ready. For example, everybody spoke about climate change. And of course, we cannot fight climate change if we don't take care of our forest. But we can only take care of our forest if we put sustainable forest management in the middle of our agri-food system approach. And that means, how can we approach smallholder farmers not only to take care of their farms to produce, but also to take care of the forest. And there we have a great example which is being developed now with one of the Netherlands banks, the Rabobank, with FVO and 2 or 3 other countries, and that's a carbon credit system for farmers. Paying farmers not only to produce in a climate smart way, but also take care of the forest. If they plant trees, they will get paid for planting the trees or take care of their forest or part of their forest. And that's what we need, because you give the farmers a direct incentive to bring it forward. I think that's an example how we have to sit together with the private sector. The carbon credit system is of course globally, but how can we translate it to national systems to support smallholder farmers also being involved in sustainable forest management, because that's the concrete action which we need. Another element, of course, is partnerships at the global level. We have to rethink what we are doing. I'm still surprised that we still have the collaborative partnership on the forest. I think the forests are scattered when you look to the UN system. Why not diminish the CPF and start the UN forest? You have an example of UN water, a UN forest, where we really cooperate, not only having forest organizations in UN forest, but also having the agri-food systems and organizations in UN water, because only then we can build bridges and we can tear down the silos, because we're still working in silos. I see it on a daily basis here in Rome. I see it on a daily basis in New York. Only if we tear down the silos between climate change, forest and agriculture, we can move forward and get the needed financial support and policy support. And of course, we have to rethink our coordination at the international level. We don't need 4 or 5 organizations to organize a meeting. And you've seen with your World Forestry Congress that you can make a step forward, that you can bring people together, and that you can open the arena of forests to the world. And that's what we need. We need to get the high-level potential, the high-level action, and the high-level involvement, not only of ministers of forest or agriculture or environment, but again, of our prime ministers. We have to bring it to UNGA again, and I think you made the first step, but let's do it with the private sector, because only then we get the necessary resources to implement sustainable forest management on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hans Hugeveen. Can I now call upon Her Royal Highness Princess Basma bint Ali of Jordan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's always the hardest to speak the last in any event, because everyone before me has mentioned everything that I wanted to say. But however, I'll try and be concise. The one thing I think we can take away from today's session and the past sessions is how important collaboration is. And collaboration, be it from indigenous peoples and local communities to the big industries, to the big, huge international and global organizations. But collaboration, as so eloquently said by our panelists here today, was the how. How do we go about doing this? Not only is it the how, I think the how, there's many resources in front of us, as we've seen over the past few days, where the how has been answered. We need the innovation, as was said again, and we need to be quite honest with ourselves and be transparent in how do we forge these partnerships. Local and indigenous peoples and local communities are at the very core. Why? Because they have their ancestral heritage that was deep-rooted within the soils of the lands that they live. This is a concept we all need to understand and embody and bring it forward all through along the policies that we regulate. It is the relationship of every single human being with the land that sustains it. We have a very casual saying in Arabic which says that basically the meat on your bones comes from the bounty of this land. And this is something that doesn't only apply to indigenous peoples and local communities, but every single human being. It is our right. But their right and their voices have to be heard, because their voice is the true voice. It's a voice of sincerity. It's a voice that goes all the way back to history, within history, to their ancestors and what they learned from there. So let's use their voice, learn from it, and bring it forward. And as important as the global institutions are, they need to hear this voice, but they also give us another perspective, which is a way, a facility to be able to finance these projects. And the one thing I did like as a concept to say, the transparent collaboration. This is where we have to forge forward in the future, to be absolutely transparent in our attitudes, in our hidden agendas, as many people would say. Furthermore, we have to be innovative, and one thing Alfred kindly mentioned was the rangelands and arid landscapes. This is to broaden the definition of what forests can be. There is a lot, I mean, 60% of the world's food comes from dry lands and arid landscapes. We have to be very aware of that, and the woodlands and the shrubs should also be included in that. So not limit ourselves into tightly defined definitions of what is a forest. It goes beyond the forest boundary. And lastly, I would like to end with sorry, I'm just looking at my notes, with the note that forest sector development is the key solution to climate adaptation and mitigation, and the benefits are there. So truly, truly, as it was said earlier, we have to raise the profile of the benefits of forests, not just trees, not just climate change, not just the sequestering of the carbon, but they have so much more, especially in water. And water has been mentioned here today quite a few times. It regulates our water systems. And coming from the second most water poor country in the world, this is of the utmost importance that we have to look towards the benefits of our forests. And quite frankly, if we don't do it now, we've missed a chance. However, I feel that within this Congress, we have this opportunity, and I thank every and each single participant to take us forward, all the way from listening to the indigenous people's voices, to the big organizations, the scientists who can prove to us, because we're now a very much science-based authority that can give us the stamp of approval that says, no, this is true, and what they say is real. So I would like to end with saying that forests are the key. Collaboration has to be transparent and honest, and it goes all across the board because we share this same world. We are all one, regardless of where we come. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Princess Basma. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about collaboration, this isn't a sort of touchy-feely thing. We have our eyes on the prize. What we're really talking about is amping up the importance, amping up the attention, amping up the resources that the forest and beyond forest agenda absolutely needs. We're not just talking about human relationships, we're talking about the future. That's what collaboration really means. And I thought Hans Högmann made good points when he was talking about making institutional changes, because sometimes you can't even do collaboration within the FAO because of those silos. And if you can't do collaboration there, then, well, what hope is there for the rest of us? So, of course, what we're really talking about is pushing forests and pushing those forest plus issues up the agenda, ever up the agenda, politically and in our private sectors and our civil societies and so forth. I thought that was a point that came through very strongly from all those three keynotes, and I thought that we were fortunate to hear them. We're coming to the end of this session. I think it's been a productive, interesting, rather funky session. And we're going to end with a slightly innovative cultural performance, I believe. So more joy there. And can I ask Mayun Sol to come up to the stage and introduce that concluding cultural performance? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mi-hyun Sol, a forest science working for CIFOR and the Korea Forest Service. I am very delighted to introduce Arirang Master Nam Eun-hye, who is one of the nationally recognized official successors of Arirang, which is recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. Arirang has been performed with 3,600 variations of 60 different versions worldwide, more than 600 years. Arirang is not just a traditional song, but this is a spirit of Korea. Arirang has been sung in both of South Korea and North Korea, and so it symbolizes reunion of two Koreas. Therefore, we would like to listen to Arirang here together with you. Today, Master Nam will sing for us the original Arirang and Chirchika Arirang, which has been sung by Korean Uzbekistan to comfort themselves lived away from their home country. We wish Arirang will carry its peaceful message over global forest without boundaries. Please give her a big hand.
아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 나를 버리고 가시는 신이도 못 가서 발병 난다 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 가자 가자 어서 가자 백두산 덜미에 해저물어 간다 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 청천 하늘에 잔별도 많고 이내 가슴에 희망도 많다 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 서산에 지는 애는 지고 싶어지나 날 버리고 가시는 님 가고 싶어 가나 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 수십 년 전 이 고장에 와 우리가 심은 백양나무 자라 지르치크 북면벌을 지켜오며 우거진 녹음은 농부들의 쉼터되었네. 오늘도 심참에 거기 모여 있구나. 못 갔다는 꽃나이 처녀들아. 북면벌 탐스러워 흥겨워하느나 조선 처녀 우즈벡 처녀들아. 동브라를 타는 우즈벡 처녀들아. 어쩌면 그리도 잘 타느냐 고려미녀 체르치크 아라리요 아리랑 아라리요. 목화송이 만지는 손 그리도 날쌘 줄야. 타는 손길마다 나비처럼 춤을 추네 체르치크 아라리요 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다. 나를 버리고 가시는 인물 십리도 못 가서 발병난다. 일따라 노래하네 돈부라 가락 맞춰 청아한 그 목소리 흥겨웃게 노래하네 체르치크 아라리요 아리랑 아라리요 체르치크 아라리요 아리랑 아라리요 체르치크 아라리요 아리랑 아라리요.